Hi, uh, I'm Davide.
I'm Neal.
We'll be giving the usual update on the activities of the CentOS Hyperscale SIG. We'll start with a quick recap. We'll talk about deliverables, we'll talk about recent work and stuff we've been doing, and we'll close with what's coming up down the pipe. So, Hyperscale is a SIG. It is focused around CentOS Stream. The idea is to have a place for people that work around large-scale infrastructure to have kind of a common ground where we can all work together on things that are needed. This started originally with people from Meta and other companies, but it is by no means limited to folks working in large tech companies. And the idea is just to foster collaboration between folks around packaging and tooling and infrastructure and things like that. Almost everyone that has deployments of CentOS in production ends up rewriting roughly the same tools and having to solve roughly the same problems. So we wanted to find a way to take this out and make it easier for people to collaborate. We have 36 members as of this month. It's been steadily growing. To be fair, a bunch of those members aren't super active, so at some point we should clean that up. But in general, I would say the meetings are well attended. There's good activity. This started in 2021. Jesus,
it's been 4
years already.
This is our 4-year anniversary.
Oh, nice. Oh yeah, that is right. Nice. It's been a while. We are on Matrix. You can hang out there. Most of us are based in the US, but a few of us are in Europe, so you should get answers in roughly 24 hours-ish. We have bi-weekly meetings on Fedora Meeting, also on Matrix. The meetings are minuted, although I routinely forget to update the minutes list on the docs page, but eventually they will show up there. We also do monthly video meetings. This is something that started during COVID, and we found it was nice to have people to see face-to-face. These are a mix of working sections and then just shitposting and social hangouts.
Mostly shitposting.
And then we have meetups. We did one yesterday. It was very productive. We will publish notes from that. We ended up doing like twice a year meetup, I would say.
Yeah.
Usually it's this conference and then something else.
Yeah.
We'll see where the next one will be this time.
Mm-hmm. So for the SIG, we have our charter, which David already said all the things, so who cares? But we have all these documentation and reports and talks like this one. So if you want to see all the stuff we've ever said about hyperscale updates, you can watch every iteration of this and see how we started from fumbling to actually knowing what we're talking about. Mostly, yeah. And we have our issue tracker, which is more of a task tracker. We have other trackers. We'll talk about that later in here. But this is like sort of the nexus of the SIG.
Yeah, the issue tracker is a bit of a war zone now. We kind of forgot to clean it up. We were supposed to do that yesterday.
We were supposed to do that yesterday. We'll do
that. Okay, let's talk about what we actually have in the SIG. We have faster moving package backports, meaning we take packages that we believe will be useful, usually from Fedora, and we make them available. We have packages that deviate from CentOS Stream in various ways that we believe are useful. We have a dedicated repo for large-scale testing enablement. We are on kernel. We have live DVD ISO images, so you can install the distribution, and we have cloud images. Let's go over this one by one. Backports. Backports are delivered into the main hyperscale repo. These are meant to be drop-in replacement for stock CentOS Stream packages, so they should behave the same as the stock ones provided by Stream, but just give added functionality. This is almost always true, with a handful of exceptions that aren't super important. If you use this, please do not file bugs on Jira, because people will be very confused. File bugs on our tracker, and then we can triage it as appropriately. These require a PEL and CRB, because nobody in their right mind runs the distribution without a PEL. If you have to do FIPS or stuff like that, that is not my problem. We are targeting x86-64 and AR64 because those are the only architectures we work on and have access towards. If somebody really likes mainframes and wants to port this to S390X, we now have builders for that. But I don't particularly want to be responsible for testing it. But if you do and you would like to join the SIG and do that, by all means, feel free.
Same goes for Power. If you like hyperscale and you want to do it on Power,
yes.
Go up, please.
You can get both of those on IBM Cloud, by the way, if you really like pain. These have a lot of packages. Most of these ends up being kind of low-level system user space stuff, a few core components that we'll talk about in a moment. You can find the list in the tags. That's just the laundry list of the ones we updated in the last few months. As you see, it's just a mix of utilities, hardware enablement stuff. things like that. There's also some major packages that are work in progress, like OpenSSH. OpenSSH is kind of a fun one because at Meta we had an internal fork of OpenSSH for the longest time with like 15, 20 patches on top, some of questionable value, some more useful. And they've been like slowly trying to get those upstreamed. Upstreaming stuff in OpenSSH, as you might be aware, is challenging. So as a stopgap, we've been trying to get these into a better shape and having it published in Hyperscale, so at least it's there and other people can use it. This isn't yet for public usage, I would say, but it is there if you want to play with it. I mean, you can look at the list of patches. Roughly, I would say it's mostly stuff around logging and a few questionable things about ciphers.
I think at this point, I think all the patches are now documented. We went through several months of review to get those clean, to get those documented.
Mostly stuff around logging and auditing. I think we still had one patch to enable the Neal cipher, which you should not use, and a few other things. I don't work on this myself, so I don't know the details.
I close my eyes.
Yeah.
So we have, for package updates, actually kind of maybe, we have in theory automated tracking for packages that need to be updated. And I say this in theory because we built this was built by a former member of our SIG that put it in the OpenShift CI, and one OpenShift cluster upgrade or two of them ago, it stopped working, and I have not been able to fix it, so it kind of doesn't do anything. So that's why the bullet of rewrite plan to be based on GitLab CI, because none of us can figure out why it doesn't work. So
if you're good at OpenShift, we could use the help, because none of us apparently is good at OpenShift.
Yeah, there is that. But it leverages kind of the notification infrastructure that exists. Thank you, Fabian, for actually making that work, that we can reliably know when something gets pushed, and when it is working, it lets us know that we need to like merge upstream CentOS changes into our fork packages and stuff like that.
Let's talk about systemd. We have our own backport of systemd based on the one that's in Fedora. We currently have 2.5.7 as of a few days ago. We generally try to track the latest systemd release or the latest -1. This targets CentOS 3.9 and CentOS 3.10. It is basically the same systemd you would find in Fedora with all the features enabled. So it has all of the daemons that RHEL doesn't ship are here if you want to use them. So you can use networkd, you can use resolved. It has oomd available. This needs PSI in the kernel, but PSI is now available
everywhere
in the RHEL kernel, so that's not a problem anymore. You used to have to turn it on manually in RHEL 8. The journal has a bunch of improvements around cow optimization, in particular if you happen to use it on a cow file system like ButterFS. We also ship an SLinux module for this, so it should mostly work on SLinux. However, none of us run SLinux in production, so except Neal.
At least you remembered this time.
So your experience may vary, especially I would say core systemd should work fine, but systemd has a lot of daemons in it. And some of the like more fringy daemons will probably fire off SLinux exceptions. If somebody really likes SLinux and would like to fix the policy module, that would be appreciated.
For what it's worth, things are a little easier now because we're now backporting this SLinux policy from Fedora rather than attempting to beat into shape the one in CentOS. So if someone wants to come and help for this, at least a plus point would be this would also make it work in Fedora too, because that's where we would make you fix it.
We also don't have super good testing around SLinux yet, but that's something we'd like to improve down the road. We used to do development for these in a soft fork repo. These days we do everything just upstream, so the builds we do are built off the systemd stable branches in the systemd upstream repositories. Systemd is as like the main branch, but then they have stable branches where they like cherry pick patches, kind of like the kernel. The packaging also used to be its own, and now is exactly the Fedora rawhide specs, just merged into our repo, because we pushed all of the work up to make Zbyszek happy. So now we can have everything in one place. We also contributed our testing logic there, so we can run everything in one place there using the FMFTMT stuff. Then there's a repo that Dan, who is somewhere here, set up. It should be. Which is on GitLab, that uses GitLab pipelines, and this runs the builds and gives us feedback when stuff breaks. And then we have a CI setup that takes the systemd GitHub main and every day builds it, makes a bunch of RPMs and shows them in a repo, so we can get daily signal on whether something that happened in systemd is going to break for the future release, or something that we did is going to break the future release, and so on. Eventually, we would like to hook this up to OpenQA or to something more streamlined, but right now it's not there yet. We do test these internally at Meta, but the results of that, the internal CI, aren't published yet because we haven't quite figured out how to make that useful. All of this stuff is surprisingly well documented because it turns out we have a bunch of people working on systemd, and every time we add a new person, it's nice to have documentation. You can find the documentation there if you would like to use this or contribute to it. That is the wrong URL, but it should still work because mkdocs does redirect.
Yes.
Which is very nice.
So the Intel optimized package, most of these actually aren't in Hyperscale anymore, but this is kind of an example of us actually incubating functionality and features that spun out into another SIG and then later was merged into CentOS Stream itself. So Intel came to us some time ago about being able to bring optimized variants of certain critical components like zlib and glibc to test out being able to use new CPU features as they are detected to be available. And so we rolled these out, and people at Red Hat were interested, and so we spun up this ISA SIG thing, and they rolled those in, and eventually those were merged into CentOS Stream 8 and 9
and 10.
Well, I mean, they were inherited from Fedora in 10, but like for 8 and 9, that happened in the CentOS side. So this is like a good example of how we kind of helped another party come into the community, do stuff, get Red Hat to be interested, pull that stuff in, and resolve into like generally an improved platform for everyone.
And as we mentioned, right now we're still primarily targeting CentOS Stream 9. This is a laundry list of things we did throughout the lifetime of 9. There were features we were able to contribute upstream working with Red Hat that made it into the distribution itself. So the work we did during the SIG ended up being helpful. Also for people running stock CentOS Stream and RHEL. We are also doing this for 10. The work with 10 is still ramping up, but we already had a fair amount. Oh, you added more. Nice. We already had a fair amount of features that we added for CentOS Stream 10. And with more to come. We just filed a bunch more JIRAs today.
Yes, there's going to be a lot.
A lot of these ends up being, some of these are just straight package rebases, where like this thing is self-contained, it'd be nice to update it, and it doesn't hurt anyone, so it makes sense to do it. But often it ends up being like bug fixes, extending features, figuring out things that were unshipped or they weren't enabled for whatever reason, but are still useful and don't hurt anyone.
Yeah, so like an example that's not on this list because I was too tired to actually add it is AeroFS utils in CentOS Stream was upgraded by us because I've been doing testing in both Fedora and CentOS Hyperscale about improving the performance and the compression for live images using AeroFS because SquashFS is not supported on 10 anymore. So, I went with them, talked upstream, a bunch of stuff happened, and Bob's your uncle, so I went and updated the package in Fedora and then sent, made a ticket and sent a pull request to update everything in CentOS Stream, and that's all landed in whatever. So tons of performance improvements, like your AeroFS image sizes are probably 30% smaller now, and that's why. So stuff like that.
I mentioned earlier the large-scale testing. The idea is that we have a repository that we can use if we need to deploy and test things that kind of affect the whole distribution, but we don't believe should be deployed everywhere for production just yet. A good example of this is the NF RPM copy on write work. This is something we've been working on for several years now, and it's a set of patches on top of RPM and DNF that make package installation significantly more efficient on copy on write file systems such as BudderFS. And this is something we run in production at Meta. We've been running it for quite a while. It works very well, but it is not yet upstream in RPM, and the upstreaming process of this has been challenging. There is a long list there of links if you're interested in this. This went through various evolutions and rewrites. The current iteration is built for both 9 and 10, although I think the one for 10 we still need to polish it. But
it's not there yet, which is why my images weren't.
Yeah, we'll get it sorted out.
Yeah.
Matteo, who is somewhere down there, is working on this now. But We hope to eventually get this into RPM proper and into Fedora because we think it would be valuable to have everywhere. But until it is, it's still in the experimental repo now.
To give you an idea of like how useful this can be, a very easy way to see the improvement with these patches is an image build that I do, because I build all these live images and whatever, right? So I'm building these images like the cloud images, and the package transaction time cuts from like 10 minutes to 2 with these things, because so much IO operations get conserved because it's able to do smarter things when, you know, I have ref links between the host and the target, stuff like that. So these kinds of things can, in normal situations, it seems small, but it builds up and it becomes very nice for again, large scale deployments.
Yeah, for image build scenarios, it's at least a 10x improvement. We have roughly the same experience internally in Meta. You should talk about the kernel.
Right. So, because I do the kernel things. So CentOS Hyperscale provides its own kernel, now based on the Fedora one with a rel-ish config. We used to be derived from the CentOS Stream kernels. Now we don't do that anymore because it is too hard. I have given previous versions of this with more detail. You can go watch those and find out why it's too hard. But now we have a development tree that's forked from Arc. We build it for CentOS Stream 9 and 10, and right now 6.12, we will roll over to the next version. We basically track Fedora stable. So as soon as Fedora rebases to a new kernel stream, we upgrade with it. And so the main difference from stock rel config that we have currently, although we are willing to explore more based on user feedback or whatever, is we have Btrfs support turned on, and we have the Android modules that are required for Waydroid to function. So if you're doing Android development, then you can use this and actually have a decent experience developing your Android applications, because they won't be slow. The secure boot stuff is still ongoing. Fabian mentioned it earlier, so I just, whatever, yeah. So while we don't use the CentOS Stream kernel for Hyperscale itself anymore, that hasn't really stopped us from, if we determine that there are things that are missing or broken or could be improved, that would benefit stock CentOS, because again, our systemd backport is available for people to use on the stock kernel. So we do make sure that that stuff works. When there's things missing, we will try, or need to be improved, we try and help here. So for CentOS Stream 9, we did a bunch of build fixes, upgraded the Z standard stuff. There was some crypto stuff, miscellaneous things. For CentOS Stream 10, again, we're ramping up, so there hasn't been too much. But one big thing was that when I was working on producing our desktop images, that I noticed that ZRAM was completely broken. So turned out people missed the fact that with the upgrade to 6.12, a whole bunch of configs had to be turned back on. So I sent a fix to get that all done, and it landed. And I think the kernel that just went out 2 or 3 days ago on CentOS Stream 10 is the one that has this fix landed. So we are doing stuff like this because we want to pay attention and kind of help boost the overall experience for CentOS Stream users. We have a contribution guide for contributing to the rel kernel if you don't understand how to fix things and send patches to them in the right way where they'll actually consider it. We have a cheat sheet that will help. And part of this is also helped with like being able to support Btrfs as an externalized kernel module for Stream 9. I assume that we'll probably work with the Kmod SIG again to see if we can do something similar for Stream 10 as things settle down a little bit more. But yeah, so this is kind of, we try to make sure that we can help the mainline experience with even at the kernel level.
On the user space side, we have the corresponding user space for Btrfs. So Btrfs progs is backported from Fedora and is currently at 6.12. We have comsize, which is the handy utility that tells you how compression is set for files. Neal also backported the entirety of the storage stack and restored Btrfs support, so you can install systems from scratch with Btrfs already, and all of like Anaconda and Blivet and all that fun stuff has Btrfs, and this is what we use for our spins. Outside of Btrfs, we have backport of the Kpatch stack. Kpatch is used for kind of live patching. This is something that is provided in stock CentOS Stream and rel, but the version that's provided is it only has the ability to apply patches. It doesn't have the ability to make your own patches, which makes it kind of useless unless you're using a patch feed from somebody else. We wanted to make our own patches, so we restored kpatch build, and that works. And we use this extensively at Meta. We also backported a patch set to support kernels built with Clang and FPGA optimizations, which are quite useful. And a few other minor fixes. We do, at Meta, we do a lot of work upstream directly on kernel life patching. So this is one of those things like systemd where we're able to contribute directly here. We also backported kernel tools, kexec tools more recently, because there was some dependencies snafu with another package. I think I still need to file a GR for that one, actually. Yeah. But that one is less interesting. On the containers front, we have a minimal container image you can play with for CentOS Stream 9. It's on Quay. This is supposedly built from scratch and published from OpenShift, but the build pipeline is broken right now because OpenShift.
Yeah, cluster upgrades broke everything.
Yeah, we are likely going to set this on fire and redo it on GitLab in the foreseeable future, and we'll also get Stream 10 images, containers coming soon. These are built from scratch, to be clear. They're not derived from the stock Stream containers because the stock Stream containers derive from UEI, and that was kind of a mess.
No.
I haven't looked at all what the situation is for 10. Maybe for 10 they stopped using UBI. Do you know?
I haven't. I don't know.
I don't know. We should check.
We should check.
But I mean, it's kind of trivial to make them from scratch anyway.
Yeah. Right. So, in addition to the container images, we're also making other images as part of the CentOS Hyperscale spin, which at some point will actually be on the website that you can download from. We have already right now for 2 CentOS Stream 9 spins, the GNOME and KDE Plasma ones. And these are live DVDs that have all the hyperscale content on it. All the stuff that we just talked about earlier is all included on here, pre-configured, working out of the box. And so you can download them and use them. CentOS Stream 10 images are under development. These are, and with CentOS Stream 10, like the idea is that we're going to move towards more of a strategy of having a flagship variant and then these alternate variants and stuff like that people can use and contribute to. So, like for example, for CentOS Stream 10, we'll have the KDE flagship variant, and as Hyperscale GNOME gets developed, the package set to have a complete GNOME desktop, we can add a GNOME flavor and go on from there and so on. So again, things are still in flux. It's early days, but we'll have it fairly soon. And on top of that, cloud images, which are the same story as the live images, but for the cloud, which means cloud environments, no desktop environments, it's server workloads. But a lot of this stuff actually fed up back into Fedora and is actually was the progenitor of the work in Fedora 40 to redo all of the cloud, vagrant, and container images to use Kiwi, and kind of kickstarted the development of the Kiwi plugin for Koji and all this other stuff to make it so that there is a streamlined, easy to manage way to produce both standard and custom images from this thing. And the improvements that come from there come back down into us in Hyperscale, and has also helped the CentOS alternative image SIG, which you'll hear about in a little bit. But like that's what that the cloud images work was kind of the seed for all of this other stuff that has happened here.
Okay, let's talk about what's new. We have CentOS Stream 10, as we mentioned, so you can start playing with that. I think we only have this one slide. Yes. Checking. We had a bunch of work to get an updated visualization stack in Hyperscale. So right now we have backports of QEMU and libvirt that are being used in production at Meta, and this should work fairly well. We are going to be doing active development on QEMU in particular, so you can expect this to be updated. I also expect to have libguestfs at some point in the future there. libguestfs is challenging because it uses every single language on the face of the earth in one single package, but it is necessary. So yeah, this should be available soon, and it works fairly well. The other thing that we were able to do in the last 6 months or so is that we joined the Linux distros mailing list. Linux distros is the private list that gives you embargoed security notifications when there's CVEs. Because we are shipping software that is like end user software, and we have a distribution spin, and these things can have CVEs, we felt it would be responsible to be able to handle this timely. So this has been useful. We've been able to leverage it already a couple of times, and in general, it's been valuable to get this kind of exposure early on. Coming up, as Neal mentioned, we will have spin images for 10. We are also playing around with porting CentOS Stream to Apple Silicon platforms. Neal and I, in a different project, have been involved into the Fedora port to Apple Silicon with Fedora's iRemix. We'd like to kind of do the same thing for CentOS Stream. I have a copper that does not work for this right now, but we are slowly getting there. There's like a long list of things to get into Appel, but we'll get there eventually. There's also work around doing unified composes for SIG content, which Neal will talk.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later.
We already talked about QEMU. We would also like to get QEMU in Appel at some point, but that is challenging. So we will see where that goes. And finally, there's still interest in doing butterfly transactional updates at some point in the future. We'll see when we might get there. I think that's all we had. We will leave you here with a few resources. As I mentioned, feel free to join our meetings. They're open. You're also welcome to join the video meetings. Just introduce yourself, and you're welcome to come and shitpost with us. We have the issue trackers. We have the mailing list. Any questions? Yes. How does this work?
He's got the third microphone.
You have the mic.
We have 4 mics, actually.
Run the mic.
I was half a millisecond earlier. So, Neal, you mentioned that the EROFS images are 30% smaller, but you didn't say then the bloated up EROFS images or the squashFS images?
They were 30% smaller from when you would do AeroFS images before this update. That's not relative to squashFS.
Okay.
The relative to squashFS is a different one. At this point, they're comparable. The compression levels are relatively equivalent with this patch set. Before that, it was significantly worse unless you pumped up the compression levels and waited a whole lot more time. There's been a lot of work done upstream, and I'm engaging with them on a regular basis about like bringing the time down and bringing the compression levels up, and that has been on almost a every other day improving kind of cadence. So like I can't give you accurate numbers because like when I get to my computer and look at my email, the dude's written another patch and like it's another 5 or 6% improvement, and I have to keep testing to tell you what those numbers are. So, but it is a lot of continual improvement. I also became the co-maintainer of AeroFS utils in Fedora, so I can just keep pushing the backports and fixes and updates there pretty quickly. But obviously I can't do that for CentOS Stream, so I just wait until there's a nice batch of fixes and then I'll send it again.
Thank you. You mentioned, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned about contributing something to upstream QEMU. What areas do you have in mind? And second related question is the QEMU in Apple. Why extra packages? What is missing currently in CentOS? Or
I think we can answer this question backwards. So because it's a lot easier. Okay. So the reason for QEMU in Apple is that the QEMU KVM package in RHEL strips almost all of the functionality from QEMU. So QEMU KVM only includes native Arch virtualization and removes most of the
ECG, the
user emulated, system emulated, some of the extra devices, the display modes, the remote modes, the orchestration modes. All those things are important for various reasons to us. A couple jobs ago, I was maintaining the virtualization stack, and I was the original one who brought it into Hyperscale. Now, Meta also uses that work and has been extending it further.
Yeah. From a community point of view, that makes absolutely full sense. Thank you.
Well, foreign Arch mock truths don't work without QEMU user, and that isn't in RHEL. So it is very hard to build for a computer you don't have when you don't have a way to run it on your computer.
Yeah, and in terms of QEMU, at Meta, we are using more and more extensively QEMU for targeted deployments, I would say. The thing, I don't work on this myself directly, but the things I'm aware of, that there's a lot of work happening around confidential computing, and part of that is backporting work that has already happened upstream in QEMU into the build, but part of that is also trying to run that in production, finding stuff that is maybe not working as well, fixing it upstream, and then getting those trickled into distribution. There's a number of other areas. We also use QEMU extensively for ephemeral development system, for lack of a better word. People do very interesting things on development systems, and it's not uncommon to manage to trigger fun bugs. So those are examples of things. For what it was, the folks that work on these are getting into Brussels today. So I'm happy to put you in touch if you'd like.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I work with the QEMU community as well closely. So there's also folks working on confidential virtualization. Also, will be here tomorrow.
Oh, excellent.
There's a separate attestation developer room at FOSDEM related to this confidential thing. But
Yeah, so originally when I brought in the virtualization stack into Hyperscale, when I was working at Datto, we needed the upgraded QEMU to have fixes for being able to convert disk images to various virtualization formats, like particularly VHDs, which were broken for a very long time, and we were backporting fixes that we were making upstream for that. The other one was we had a patch set on top of QEMU and libvirt to support RDP for it with our RDP-Mux solution. And so that was being maintained with RDP-Mux and all this other stuff in Hyperscale for a while. That was during the 8 series time, and the 9 and 10 we stopped using that at Datto, but then Meta picked it up for their own use cases, so the stack kind of stayed in Hyperscale.
thank you. Don't want to take up more time.
Anything else? Oh, all right.
You mentioned the Wayland for Waydroid
Yeah.
patches. Is that in Fedora?
The Waydroid stack, the user space for Waydroid is in Fedora. It is not branched in EPEL, but if
Is it working in the kernel though?
I mean, so it needs
doesn't work.
it needs 2 Android features in the kernel to be turned on to be useful, and so the stock rel kernel doesn't have it as far as I know. I haven't actually checked with the 10 configuration, but it wasn't there before. But
I was more specifically asking about Fedora. Sorry.
yeah,
I know
for
this-
Fedora, it's all there.
Fedora's good.
Okay.
Fedora's been that way in Fedora since Fedora 34. Yeah, 34. So it works on either Fedora KDE or Fedora Workstation since Fedora 34.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.